Previously, on And You Thought It Was Safe.
So pucker up, Buttercup, and review Josh Trank's Fantastic Four.
I'd love to, but closest thing we have is this 20th Century Fox film that everyone blamed on Josh Trank after it all went wrong. Apparently no one can use Alan Smithy as a pseudonym anymore. Thanks, Joe Esterhaus. Add that to the list of things you ruined. But for simplicity's sake, I'm gonna just call it what all my friends started calling it as soon as they saw the poster. Fant4stic. Because nothing says, serious film you should totally go see, like swapping a number for a vowel in the middle of your title. I'm looking at you, Scrufforum. Actually, no I'm not, because you shouldn't exist. Back to the Fantastic Four. As you probably know, they were the team that kicked off Marvel Comics' initial success back in the 60s. Before Spider-Man, before Doctor Strange, the Fantastic Four were there, kicking ass. So it's real sad that, so far, all their movies have been made for grossly ulterior motives. 1994's only exists because the company that made it was trying to hold on to the film rights, lest Marvel sell them off to someone richer, which is, of course, exactly what wound up happening. 2005's Fantastic Four and its 2007 sequel were 20th Century Fox's attempts to make a lighter, more family-friendly alternative to the X-Men. And like most attempts to make a more family-friendly version of something, they wound up being the worst kind of time-wasting crap. Not that the X-Men don't appeal to kids from 1 to 92, it's just that they occasionally make the kids ask their parents uncomfortable questions. Like, Mommy, what's Auschwitz? Or, hey, Mom, how come they make evolution look so cool? All of our homeschool material said it was a tool of Satan. Movie rights contracts tend to run on a 10-year schedule, and nobody at Fox wanted to be the guy who let the Fantastic Four go. They doubtless all had nightmares about the $1 billion Disney would make the day after they teamed up the Fantastic Four with the Avengers. They obviously wanted a quick cash grab they could use to move some branded merchandise in the third fiscal quarter of 2015. And they might have gotten away with it too, if they hadn't hired a true believer. On paper, Josh Trank looked like a natural for this job. The director of Chronicle, aka the best superhero movie of 2012, and a lifelong fan of the Fantastic Four, as even a casual viewing of Chronicle will reveal to even the thickest member of the audience. To the vampire squid who run Hollywood, I'm sure he looked like someone they could control. A hungry young indie director they could dazzle with a 6-figure budget. Which is probably why they started fucking with him almost from day one.
That's pure speculation on your part. Second-hand readings of unclear facts from biased sources.
Well, yeah. Somebody won't let me out of the house to do actual research.
You have work to do.
Alright, fine. Let's do some math. That's work for most people, right? Apparently, Fant4stic cost $120 million to make. Now, to you, me, and everybody who isn't a fucking bankster, that might sound like a lot, but we live in a world now where you can't even make a Batman movie for under $200 million. And Batman doesn't have any fucking superpowers. Captain America has what are generally described as peak human powers. So, for example, he can't throw an 18-wheeler at you like a Kryptonian, but he can throw a motorcycle at you just fine. And his first movie still managed to cost $140 million. 2005's Fantastic Four managed to only cost $100 million, but its sequel topped off at $130. And this was in the age before social media and its premium advertising space. If you want your trailer to play in front of every YouTube video that every 18 to 35-year-old watches for 6 months straight, you're gonna have to pony up the dough. To Google, obviously. We don't see any of that. Pennies on the dollar, really. All of which is to say, if you ever find yourself the prospective director of a Fantastic Four film, and some jumped-up suit and tie-wearing shithead tells you,
make us our own Avengers film, at half the cost, and a third of the time. Oh, and if you could also write the script for us.
The first thing you should do is check behind the nearest couch for Ashton Kutcher.
Am I being punked?
Yes, you are being punked. For one thing, Avengers cost $220 million even before they started buying up ad space. For another, the very name Fantastic Four implies you'll need 4 characters, each with their own individualized superpowers that they'll all need to show off eventually. And somebody better show up to play the villain at some point. Otherwise, your core 4 will wind up looking like assholes who waste their superpowers on pointless sight gags. And you'll have remade the 2005 film all over again. In retrospect, I'm not surprised that production troubles and rumors of production troubles began to leak out even before the trailers debuted. Stories about Trank showing up to work drunk, angry drunk no less, and taking it out on his cast and crew like an asshole, even trashing the house he rented on location. Now, plenty of directors do all this, and much worse, on the daily. But we poor peasants usually only hear about it 20 years after the fact, or if someone above them on their current production is already gunning for them. Simon says, boom, headshot. The way Trank tells it, higher-ups at Fox were second-guessing him long before the cameras rolled, and eventually locked him out of the editing room. He either doesn't know, or is too polite to say who the ass end of this film belongs to, but he swears up and down it's not his. And frankly, I believe him. No one who made Chronicle could produce a film this bad. Not even by accident. It's physically impossible for anyone to get that drunk. Unless, of course, they're trying to leave Las Vegas. And hell, if I found myself in Trank's place, watching my dream come true turn into a living nightmare in real time, I just might start showing up drunk to work too. I'd try not to take it out on my cast, though. That's pretty bad form. And we got a great acting troupe here. With their powers combined, they could have easily made the best Fantastic Four movie to date. All they needed was something to work with. And the hell of it is, it looks like at one point they had just that. Because as narcissistic as it sounds, true believers, this is a Fantastic Four movie for me. Yes, specifically. I have no other way to explain the constant references to the horror movie work of our greatest living Canadian artist, and fellow David Cronenberg. In this retelling of the story, our 4 get their powers through a teleporter that they all decide to jump into one night after they get drunk and pissed off. Just like Seth Brundle in The Fly. Except for Sue, of course, but we'll get to her. Once they get their powers, everyone reacts to them with a moment of naked body horror. Except for Sue, of course, but we'll get to her. And this version of Doctor Doom is a total scanner. Right down to his powers of head explodey. Hell, I half expected a handgun to come popping out of one of the many LCD screens our characters spend most of the movie staring at. Now, body horror has always been the flip side of the optimistic mid-20th century exploratory sci-fi wonderment that is the Fantastic Four's bread and butter, as personified from the very beginning by the character of Benjamin J. Grimm, the ever-loving blue-eyed thing. I thought I was the only person on Earth who noticed this dichotomy at the heart of the Fantastic Four, driving their appeal down through the decades. And I was pleasantly surprised to find out that no, I'm not. It smacked other people in the face with its blithering obviousness, too. To most of the general public, including most comic book readers, the Fantastic Four have never shaken their reputation as a brain-dead, all-ages, no-stakes kind of book, no matter how many times they've all died and come back to life. A successful major motion picture that cast the Four in a new light might have done something to change that 5 years ago. But it's too late for that now. We live in a world where emotions, including horror, are openly disdained. Unless, of course, the emotion you're trying to express is snide condescension. Everybody loves that. And anybody who says different is a pussy. See? It's fun and easy. Try it yourself, kids. Oh wait, you already are. Don't deny it. I have Twitter too. I see you. So maybe this whole thing was doomed. Pun very much intended. That's why I put the extra emphasis there. Duh. From the start. Regardless, in its current form, Fant4stic has so many basic problems that even mainstream critics stopped complaining about the horror of watching, gasp, shock, 5 whole superhero movies every year to actually notice some of them. And they start right at the script level, though I'm putting that in the airiest air quotes I'm physically capable of making. It's clear this thing veered right off the road into the land of mandatory rewrites. Reshoots and re-edits behind the director's back destroyed whatever the rewrites didn't, and here we are. You know how in most movies, the first and third acts are only about half an hour long? It's like the first and last hills on a roller coaster. You want to build up anticipation and set things up in the beginning, and you want to wrap it all up well in the end. But you don't want to bore people, or they'll just yawn their way through the middle, which is going to be the longest part anyway, since that's usually where all the stuff happens. Well, the first act of Fant4stic is an hour long, and this movie only clocks in at an hour and 40 minutes total, meaning the second and third acts have 20 minutes apiece to get all their shit done. And it's really more like 15 once we subtract the agonizingly long end credits. If you turn this into a first-year script class, they'd laugh your ass all the way back to English 95, the shit you should have learned in high school. But you were too busy prepping for the statewide tests, and that's not really your fault, that's all of our faults out here, because we keep voting for all these assholes who have been blinded by Bill Gates' money. The early stuff, with Child Reed and Child Ben meeting and greeting and perfecting Reed's teleporter, is actually quite alright. The idea of Franklin Storm recruiting Reed out of a high school science fair was always contrived as hell, but then again, so is Franklin Storm. In fact, he's a better Reed Richards than this Reed Richards. His kids, and his star worker, even casually rip on him for occasionally monologuing about how the power of science and teamwork will save us all, you guys, and it will be awesome. Which has traditionally been Reed's role. He just doesn't get the time to grow into it, because nobody has any time to grow into anything here. A fact made sadder by the way this cast looks to have real chemistry. I actually buy this Reed and this Sue might see something in each other beyond the physical, which is more than I could say about the last Reed and Sue, even as I sat watching their wedding. I suspect all these scenes in the beginning were filmed first, before all hope was lost. But I could be wrong. After all, for some stupid reason, Ben Grimm does not join Reed at the Franklin Storm Super Science Academy in downtown Manhattan, despite being the guy who's been assembling Reed's crazy ideas for years. If the front half of this movie pointed towards its back half, you could read this as the first fissure in Ben and Reed's relationship. A fissure that will only widen once Reed turns into Stretch Armstrong and Ben turns into a rock monster. As it stands, though, Benjamin J. Grimm, the character with the maximum amount of both pathos and bathos, the one with the most toyetic appearance and the built-in catchphrase, the one who is arguably the walking, talking emotional core of this entire fucking super team, just disappears for 20 minutes. Bye, Ben. Nice not getting to know you. Even in a monstrosity this top-heavy, they still didn't have enough time for all these characters. As evidence, I refer you to People's Exhibit B, Victor Von Doom. The one Fantastic Four villain even non-comic book readers have heard about, if only as that guy who inspired Darth Vader's look. He's been reincarnated here as a misanthropic nerd, with a healthy distrust of military-funded science projects. So I instantly identify with him, but he loses me fast once his motivations are, once again, boiled down to, "That guy's smarter than me and Sue likes him more. I'm gonna stew about it in this corner like a bitch until I get superpowers. Then everybody's gonna die." And by the end, this Doom winds up in the same boat as most of Spider-Man's cinematic villains. A weirdo, driven crazy by superpowers. Because that's what superpowers do to people whose names aren't in the title. Did Smallville really teach you nothing? And then there's Johnny Storm. The casting of Michael B. Jordan in this role is pretty much all anyone could talk about in the lead-up. Stories about your director's drunken antics may spark some controversy. But if you cast a black actor as a traditionally blonde, blue-eyed character, well, controversy train's gonna hit you right in the face at full steam. And don't kid yourself, Fox was counting on just this very thing happening. That's free advertising from every news outlet that wants to run a story about it. I don't think they expected to pull quite so many racists out of the woodwork, though. But then again, they don't live on the internet. They don't know what we have to deal with out here. Heaven forbid a young, hungry indie director try to help out one of his young, hungry actor friends by pulling him out of obscurity and casting him as an A-list superhero in a guaranteed franchise starter. God knows what people would do if a modern Sam Raimi ever tried to help the next Bruce Campbell become what the current Bruce Campbell is. That kind of nepotism is just beyond the pale, apparently, for some people.
Some people don't see it that way.
Oh, I know. I know these people in my goddamn blood. Remember those 5 minutes after Obama got elected when all the millionaires on TV told us we were living in a post-racial society? Yeah, I didn't believe it then either. Then Idris Elba got cast as Heimdall in the Thor movies. And knee-jerk reactionary bullshit continued to be de rigueur in my little corner of this little mudball planet of ours. Same as it ever was. Hell, even little Rue from the Hunger Games caught shit for being too brown-skinned for some people.
You're just mad that another liberal Hollywood plot to increase diversity and become politically correct crashed and burned before your eyes. Like everything does.
Oh no, keep going. One more buzzword I know you don't believe in, and I get bingo.
Cultural Marxist.
Thank you. I liked Jordan in Chronicle, where he played the class president. No surprise, I like him even more here, as Johnny Storm, rebel without a cause other than himself. Because this kid's got some range. Especially when he's acting off a seasoned vet like Reggie Cathy. One of my favorite actors that not enough of y'all have heard about. Unless you watch Law and Order. Or The Wire. Or House of Cards. Damn it, man deserved a better movie than this after all those years in the TV trenches. Hell, everybody did. Why the fuck did this happen?
Because he endangered the brand synergy. Don't you see? This film had one job, sell toys to children. And how in Adam Smith's name are we going to do that if our director keeps trying to make some kind of horror movie?
Oh yeah, because, horror movies never appealed to the youth market. Ask anyone who works at New Line Cinema.
Exactly. This is a superhero film. Light-hearted, family-friendly entertainment children can annoy their parents into seeing in theaters. The better for the parents to purchase on home video so that they can silence their children and continue drinking in peace.
Well, even by that metric, it fails. Large sections of this movie are just missing in action. You know how most of the time trailers spoil all the movie's best scenes? Well, this thing's trailers spoiled so little they defy spoiler warnings. They might qualify as false advertising in a sane world, but we obviously don't live in one of those now, do we? My personal alarm bells started going off when the initial 4 who get drunk and jump on the teleporter turn out to be Doom, Reed, Johnny, and Ben, whom Reed wakes up in the middle of the night to go on a field trip to another dimension. Sue winds up back in the control room, playing Team Mom, but we'll get to her.
What are we waiting for? Let's do it.
She's always been Team Mom, for better and worse, but I usually like it when she grows into the role rather than starting out there. You get back in that teleporter right now, young men. Don't make me call Dad on you. Apparently, Trank didn't want Kate Mara to be his Sue Storm. And considering how little she gets to do throughout, I believe that too. She only catches that last little blast of I can't believe they aren't cosmic rays, wasting a perfectly good opportunity to go Hollow Man. Everyone else wakes up in Area 57. Because I guess Area 51 was still cleaning up after Mulder and Scully's last break-in. And you know all those posters with the four standing in front of some cityscape that's getting rained on by meteors or starship debris or something? Lies. All of them lies. The rest of this movie takes place in the most scenic warehouses, laboratories, and stark corridors the military-industrial complex can afford. Reed escapes through the air vents, and just as it looks like things might finally get going, boom! One of the hardest hard cuts in the history of cinema. On the other side of that, the remaining Fantastic Three are now government lab rats. Except for Ben, who's moonlighting as a human bomb, dropped into hot spots the world over whenever our always victorious army decides it's clobbering time. Sue, correctly, refers to them as tools, an old army term for kiss-asses, brown-nosers, and willing sycophants. But they need Reed to get the teleporter back online, so Sue finds him through the power of music and pattern recognition. And Ben captures him through the power of a fist to the face. What's Reed been doing all this time? Hiding out looking for a cure to Ben's new skin condition, Bruce Banner style? How much progress has he made? Does he bemoan the loss of that progress? Does he ever once voice concern that it might all get rained on out in that jungle shack? Nope. After a few concerned looks, he gets right back to work because we're all on the clock here, buddies. This movie spent an hour setting up these characters, but then it invalidated all of that by skipping over their actual development. Only Johnny and his dad maintain some kind of relationship continuity. And that's really just Dad trying to curb his son's constant hot-dogging. Again, pun intended, because puns are the only thing keeping me sane. Point is, instead of being the part where all the stuff happens, this movie's second act becomes a giant cul-de-sac. Why am I supposed to care about this Reed Richards again? Just going by the events in this film, he's a dick. He straight up abandoned all his friends. Left them to rot in what could have been that warehouse from the end of Raiders of the Lost Ark, for all he knew. And why should I care about this Sue Storm again? Does she wish she could have jumped ship like Reed? With or without her brother, whose flying and fire powers are in much higher demand than her invisible force fields. And am I the only one who cares about any of these questions? Don't answer that last one. I already know. Act 3 begins once Reed fixes the teleporter, and the DoD drags Doom back for study, since the I can't believe they aren't cosmic rays have fused him to his encounter suit, and given him mind bullets. Cue homicidal telekinetic rampage, which eventually claims Franklin Storm, because of course my favorite actor in this production had to die. Besides, now our heroes have a personal stake in the climactic battle. 'Cause, you know, a guy straight up saying he's about to destroy the world, that's just not personal enough. I mean, come on, man. Like, for real? The whole world? Ugh, who gives a shit? Oh, but a dead parent. Yes, everybody can get behind that, because what's a superhero without dead parents? If it's not Batman, it's not Batman enough. We call this the Jeff Johns method, because he got away with it for 10 whole years before the rest of you all said anything. And now it's too late. It all wraps up in the end, too quickly and too cheaply to satisfy, but still, the four manage to save Earth from the black hole Doom just magics up because he can, by magicking it out of existence because they can. Because the power of science and teamwork really is awesome, you guys. The military-industrial complex tries to keep Shanghaiing our heroes, but Sue and Johnny, having just inherited a major tech company, tell the brass to fuck off. They themselves then fuck off to a mountain stronghold where they can have one of those agonizingly twee conversations where someone offhandedly suggests their future superhero team name, and then it cuts to title before anybody can say it out loud. Urgh. Yay! It's finally the end of a completely boilerplate superhero origin story. Circa 2007, oddly enough. when Sam Raimi's Spider-Man was still the template for all such things. For once, I'm not being facetious, you guys. That really is all there is to it. A company bought up the rights to a Marvel property back when Marvel was a bankrupt shell of its current self, and then squatted on them for as long as they could. A ticking clock forced them to cobble together whatever old bullshit they had lying around, and cobble they did. When they realized that what they had was such crap, they cut it down to the bone. Not with an eye towards making anything better. Oh no, they only had one question in mind. How short can we make this in order to guarantee the maximum amount of showings per theater per day before word leaks out about how much this thing sucks? I'm having flashbacks to Amazing Spider-Man 1 and 2 and Green Lantern. And behind them all, shining like a funeral pyre, there's Catwoman. I get the real sense that some at 20th Century Fox don't want to be in the superhero game anymore. Or if they do, they're quite content to milk the X-Men franchise until Hugh Jackman keels over from dehydration. When Ben first sees the Mark II version of the teleporter, Reed tells him it's just like ours, but more expensive. And I'm pretty sure that's what all the poor bastards who worked on 1994's Fantastic Four said when they saw this thing. It's an entirely accurate assessment. But I'm still here, you bastard. What else you got?
An entirely typical superhero origin story, circa 2007. It even has an insect theme.
Spiders aren't insects, you... Fine. Next time, Ant-Man.